Alright, hello everyone, welcome back. It's that time of the week. It's time for some more PSGL Formula 7. And today we arrive at Italy and the Monza circuit for what is probably one of the most top speed dependent tracks on the calendar. And it's currently raining for qualifying. But as always, I am joined with Storm. And Storm, how are you doing? And are you looking forward to this Grand Prix?
Yeah, good evening and welcome back to PSGL. Nice to not be on my own this week, as obviously more missed I have to say, a thrilling end to a fantastic Japanese Grand Prix. I don't know if you got to watch F7 last week more, but the quite noticeable change is we don't have a QRT in anymore. He has moved up, I believe, to F5. Obviously due to availability of yourself, of him, should I say. So it does open up a new door for somebody else, and I believe Ecos Hilly is the new guy in the Mercedes. So it'll be interesting to see who kind of takes the new reins here of obviously that championship. But yeah, it is a Italy doubleheader, as this week we are in Monza, and next week we off to Imola. So yeah, definitely interesting, especially to see a wet Monza. We normally see the sunshine and dry track in Monza.
Yeah, and like you said, double header at Italy. It's going to be exciting as both tracks tend to produce a lot of action. But yeah, QRTE and getting promoted to Formula 5. Obviously, he showed his dominance here in Formula 7. And obviously the management in PSGL saw that was good enough, and they've moved him up to Formula 5. Currently, he is leading the championship with 67 points, but I don't think that is going to last for long. And just a quick update on the standings. Currently in the battle for the Formula 7 championship is surprisingly XRT Bruno, who's a reserve, but he did win last week's Japanese Grand Prix, so he is now currently in the lead of all the drivers who are still in F7. We also have Kart Racer, who's just a few points behind in P2 in the championship, and then IRT Indigo and Clark are both tied on points in P3 and 4. So it's a very interesting championship battle so far, with the reserve currently winning. Well, technically a promoted driver and a reserve in P1 and 2. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to play out. But like I said before, we're here at Monza and it's a wet qualifying session. People are currently setting their lap times. You can see most people out on the full wet compound of tyres, with Wama trying out the intermediate compound of tyres, but you can see he's about 4 seconds off. So and you can see he actually hits the wall there, so he might want to get back to the pit lane before he does any more damage to his car. So it's currently full wet conditions. A lot of people yet to set a lap time. You can see Laganga struggling on his outlap. He has a spin as he tries to get himself underway. Ecos Hilly going out on the intermediate compound tires, so he is going for a little bit of a different strategy there compared to most of the grid. But you can see Pro Gamer in the Red Bull is currently on a lap time, and he is now coming through Parabolica to finish off what will be his first lap time of the session. Very tricky with the traction here out of the final turn, especially in these wet conditions. Very easy to get it wrong, but it looks like he gets it right, and coming across the line he goes P5 with 33.5. But you can see the field spread is quite wide here. There's a big difference between a lot of drivers. The pole time being a 1 minute 30.6, and then we have Wama. We have Miguel, who's actually just retired from the session there. I'm not too sure what turn that was at, but he's now out of the session, and a 36.1 is going to be his final time. So you can see he's about 6 seconds off on his first lap. A lot of people very spread out. But Kepa on, I'm not sure, no, I think that was the wet tyres, but he's looking at going to the intermediates. He's currently got them fitted, but he's not left the garage just yet. So, and you can see he returns back to the wets there. But yeah, coming into this qualifying session, obviously I just spoke about the championship standings there, with Bruno, IRT Indigo, Kart Racer and Clark all in that battle. And in this qualifying session, who do you think has a good shout?
To be honest, I think I'm gonna go with maybe Indigo or Jagazan. Now, we had a wet race in Austria, if you remember, and both of them really excelled in the wet to intermediate conditions. So my money probably, if I was a betting man, then I'd probably put it on one of them two. But as it stands, Jagazan is on pole position, but we've still got 9 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah, and you can see, as it quite commonly is in these wet conditions, drivers going for multiple lap times. They put about 5 laps of fuel in the car, and they just go full push, full send for about 2 or 3 laps. You can see that's exactly what Jagazan did. He went full send for those laps, and that's actually a yellow flag for IRT Indigo there, making a mistake on the back straight before Parabolica. But yeah, you can see Jagazan has now 3 lap old wet tyres. So that's how long it took him to actually set that lap, because he just fueled for a couple more laps than he usually would in dry conditions, because the tyre wear, especially on the full wet compound of tyres, is usually extremely low. You can usually run an entire 50% race on one compound. So yeah, that is why you can see a lot of drivers not having fully fresh tyres when they've set their personal best so far, and that's obviously evident with Jagazan. But currently, a lot of people have gone to the intermediate compounded tyres. You can see we've got 8 minutes left in the session. At the very start, it was full wet conditions, but we might be looking at a crossover point to the intermediate compound of tyres. As you can see, a lot of drivers testing them out, seeing how fast they can go. One driver on the intermediates is Elifar Kepa, and he is now starting his first lap on the intermediates into the turn 1 and 2 chicane. You can see that's a big lock up there, and in these wet conditions, especially when you're at this crossover point between the wets and the intermediates, it's extremely hard to find your braking point, know where it is, and get it pinpoint perfect on all of your qualifying laps. But it's a learning curve for all of these drivers, so they have to get used to it for the next 7.5 minutes to try and set the fastest lap times possible. And Kepa now coming through the 2 Lesmos. You can see it's wide going into there, so maybe the intermediates aren't fully gripped up yet, or maybe Kepa just adjusting himself to the intermediate condition. And you can see this is actually, I've just noticed, this is actually quite a smart thing from Kepa. He's not using any of his ERS, because this isn't actually a full push lap. This is him just getting used to the intermediates, finding his braking points, knowing where the turn is, the limits of the traction, and obviously he's fueled up for quite a few laps, and then he's eventually going to try and go for that push lap. But looking at the driver choices now, you can see Jagazan and Thal Graphics both have just gone onto wet tyres, but Wame with 5 lap old intermediate compound tyres has just gone fastest by 0.5 of a second. It's a 30 flat for the Ferrari driver. But yeah, what I was going to say was you can see a couple of drivers are still on the wets. A lot of drivers are currently on the intermediates, and after that lap from Wame, do you think the intermediates are now coming into play over the wet compound tyres?
Yeah, I think with the intermediates you can kind of see that crossover period, because it's not really raining as much, well, from what I can see, especially doing it 5 laps on the intermediates. There may be, they have kind of rubbered in to the wet conditions. As you can see, most people on the intermediates now, other than 3 or 4 drivers. But yeah, I think we're now at that point where the Inters are the more preferred tyre, and will be the better in these conditions. Also, in the Inters, drivers are going to have to kind of find those patches on the track to keep those tyres at the right temperature, because they don't want them overheating, as I believe there's a Williams just gone past Warman. That's probably Vod Graphics, who is on a lap at the moment. It'd be interesting to see what the difference is between him and the 5 laps of tyre wear that Warman used on his run.
Yeah, I think you'll definitely give us a good indicator between the wet compound tyres and the intermediates. But currently, IRT Indigo has just started. But there you can see, actually, I was just going to ride on board with Indigo, but Thaw Graphics on wet compound tyres has just set a 29.5. The first drivers to dip into those crucial 29-second lap times. And he's gone faster than all of the intermediate compound runners so far. So you can just tell it's at that very crossover point where either tyre is in the right condition, because the wet tires are probably a lot more stable. They have a lot more traction, but they just have less grip in the corners, and the intermediates are a bit more oversteery. As you can see with IRT Indigo coming out of Ascari, you can see the oversteer that you can have on these inters. But Kart Racer is on the intermediates and has just beaten Thawed Graphics time by 0.3 of a second. He takes provisional pole position. So it's definitely very close between the two tires, but you can see everyone except Thawed Graphics is currently on the intermediate. So I think it's definitely at that stage now where the intermediates are the fastest tire. We currently have 5 drivers who still not have set a representative lap time. That's IRT Indigo, his teammate Daniel, iSharky, Miku, and Alex the G, who has just started his lap time coming into turn 1 now. You can see a lot of drivers that we've been riding on board with have been struggling going into that turn with the lockups. But Alex G manages to get it right, is a bit more cautious on the braking, brakes a bit earlier, and make sure that his tyres are kept in check. You can see Trust Vipex has actually just joined the session, so he's a little late, and we only have 3 minutes left in the session, so he's going to have to get out there and set a lap time, and it'll be interesting to see what tyres he picks. He goes on to the inters, he sees what tyre everyone else is on, and he's going to have to do one glory run on the intermediates. Alex the G on the exit of the second Lesmo now, and on the DRS straight, but you can see that rear wing flap is fully closed because of these wet conditions. Into Ascari now, you need full commitment here in the wet, and it's exactly what he has. You can see going in there, carrying 5th gear in intermediate conditions, really pushing the throttle there, and the car agreeing with it, and doesn't get much wheel spin out of there, but maybe a little more cautious like he was into turn 1. So the question is, it's definitely going to be a lap time. It's a valid, but is it going to be a fast one, as Elifar Kepa takes provisional pole position by 0.8 of a second. Alex the G across the line. It is a fast enough lap time for a top 5 position. It's 29.5 for Alex the G, but IRT Indigo finally getting a lap together on those inters after what's been all session. He just has not been able to get a proper lap in, and the one lap he does get in is a 29 flat. That puts him P2 in the session and a possible front row for the AlphaTauri driver. But you can see a lot of drivers finishing up their lap times now. We only have 1 minute and 40 seconds to go. IRT Boom has just got into the top 3 with a 29, Pro Gamer was the one who moved up. He set a 29.2, moves himself into the top 4. But we currently have Kart Racer and Thaw Graphics both on their outlaps. So at this stage, a lot of drivers currently on outlaps, and obviously Kart Racer and IRT Indigo, the two guys battling for this championship. IRT Indigo, I think, has actually finished all of his laps, but Kart Racer is on an outlap, as we still see times getting faster and faster. Yagazan sets 28.4 with the Ganga taking provisional pole position of a 28.3, but right now we only have 1.5 minutes left to go, and with how the things are shaping up here, do you think we could have a surprise pole sitter?
Yes, of course, definitely, because the track will be drying ever so quickly. So if you're kind of at the back of the train that's kind of going through on your kind of flying lap, then you're probably in the best chance to kind of set that quicker lap, especially on the fresh tyres as well. So yeah, I think we're gonna have probably maybe a different pole sitter than Laganga, and this will be, I think, if Laganga can keep hold of it, it will be his first pole position this season, and I think it might just be a shock to, as I say that, Warman goes with a 27.7 on pole.
Yeah, so Wama putting in a very quick lap, and like you said there, if you're towards the back, setting your lap times late in the session, you're in a good position. And one person who's setting their lap time quite late on is Kart Racer, just crossed the line with about 10 seconds left to go in the session. So he's going to have the track conditions at their peak. So let's see what kind of time he can put in. He's about 4 tenths up coming out of the first sector, but he needs to find almost about 2 seconds, a second and a half to get this pole position. But we currently have Olaf, who just went P2. Yagazan improves yet again. So right now, the provisional pole time at 27.7. Can Kart Racer in the Alfa Romeo try to beat that time? He's currently on the straight, on the run down to Ascari. We have a lot of people who've finished the session, two of them being Olaf and Yagazan, currently in the top 3 in the session. But you can see now, coming through Ascari, a little bit of oversteer for Kart Racer, but other than that, keeps it quite stable going into there. Ekos Hilly actually retiring from the session on the exit of Ascari. A lot of people setting lap times. Alex the G improving. Dog Graphics moving up to P4. Daniel to P3. Trust Cynics goes P1. Can Kart Racer beat that time across the line? No, he can't. He gets ever so close, but it's a 10th and a half in it. Kart Racer places P2. Can anyone beat these times? I don't think they can, and that is going to be this Monza qualifying session over. Trust Cynics, out of what feels like absolutely nowhere, has just gone and snatched pole position by a 10th and a half for McLaren. So that's a great session from him, and I don't think either of us were expecting that there.
No, that was a pretty entertaining way to finish qualifying, and it'll be interesting to see, I think, what tyres the drivers will go for the race, because obviously we don't know what the race weather will be coming very shortly. But yeah, it might just be some kind of shock positions for a few people of where they probably wouldn't normally be in a dry session. And yeah, it's really, I think, taken a shock to Mercedes not having a driver qualify in the top 10, I think, for the real first time this season.
Yeah, obviously they've had QRT in for the first 5 rounds, but he is now in Formula 5, and Mercedes have to try and work themselves outside of the top 10, try to get into a good position. But obviously, I think 3 people there weren't able to set a lap time, with the field spread actually being 2 seconds there. So it's a very big field spread, and that's just because of how different the conditions were at different points in the session. Obviously, it was driest at the end there. That's why Kart Racer and Trust Cynics were able to go very fast towards the end. But yeah, 3 drivers weren't able to get their laps in, one of which was Trust Vipex. Obviously, he joined to the session quite late, so he wasn't able to get out on those intermediates and set a single lap time in that session. So he's going to be starting from the back, but we know from experience he usually finishes at least in the top 10. Usually around 7th place, so he could work his way up. It's going to be difficult for him, but we have dry conditions for this Italian Grand Prix, and it's going to be quite a shock to the system for a lot of these drivers who have obviously were preparing themselves. They went from wet conditions, they had to find their line, their braking points, but then they had to change their driving style to the intermediate conditions. And now off of this race start in dry conditions, could be very tricky into turn 1, and turn 1 here at Monza is probably best known for the absolute carnage that it can cause. If you miss your braking point by even a millimeter, you could be taking about 5 cars with you. But you can see we are now getting ready for the race start. No formation lap because of a tire glitch, but you can see 5 red lights. They're gone and we're away. What kind of start is it for our surprising pole man, Trust Cynics? It's a good one up against Kart Racer coming into turn 1. It looks like it's a great start from Wama, who tries to pull alongside. It's going to be 3 wide into turn 1. That's not going to work out. It looks like Kart Racer had to back out there. Trust Cynics maintains P1. Kart Racer side by side with Wama. That's a bit of wheel spin there in the background for Daniel V. Wama getting the better of Kart Racer, moves himself up into P2. That's a good start from Wama there. He's going to be happy with missed that one. Daniel V currently P4 after a good qualifying session from him. Ollie trying to go around the outside of Dog Graphics. Dog Graphics backing out of the move at the second apex, but that's cost him a lot of exit time. He's now been overtaken by IRT Indigo. TF Yagazan taking advantage. These Mercedes of Elifar Kepa getting up his inside, and then he spins on the entry of the second Lesmo. So Dog Graphics all the way from about P6 now down to dead last after losing about 5 positions in just 3 turns. It's not been a good start from him. Trust Cynics still leads this race. Wama is right behind him though. We haven't had a chance to look at the tyre strategies just yet, but we can see Wama is on the softs compared to Trust Cynics on the mediums. So Wama is now going to go down the inside into Parabolica. Trust Cynics does not have the grip in those mediums, and Wama absolutely flies by him coming on to lap 2 now. But you can see Wama using quite a bit of the ERS, trying to break out of the DRS of Trust Cynics while he can and make good use of those soft tyres. Elifar Kepa down the inside of TF Yagazan going into turn 1. He moves himself up into P7. So Mercedes doing quite nicely for himself so far. They've got Elifar Kepa and currently in P7. But a lot of action there in that first lap. And I think hopefully we have a little bit of downtime here so we can actually look at the tyre strategy. So Storm, looking at the tyre choices of a lot of these drivers, what do you think these drivers are going for, and who do you think it's going to work out for best?
I think kind of with the softs, as we've seen quite a lot this game, they don't really normally last. So woman should I say, I think after maybe the first 10 laps, not even that is going to struggle on the tyres. The mediums will probably do quite well, but I think the overriding factor is once them hards kind of get to the point where they are nice and warmed up and they are rubbered in, we will start to see maybe that the hards can kind of pressurize the medium runners, as we see already. Indigo, I think, has had a spin somewhere.
And I think you're dead right with that. IRT Indigo, who's looking decent on the hard compound tyres, was able to keep up with some of the guys at the top. But she's now down in P17 after a spin there. And that is really going to cost him, especially in the championship. Like I mentioned before in qualifying, the 4 drivers who are battling for this F7 championship, IRT Indigo is among them. And right now, Clark and Bruno can't actually make it to the race. So the only 2 championship contenders that are actually attending this Italian Grand Prix are Kart Racer and IRT Indigo. One of them is on the podium, and one of them is down at the very back of the grid. So, yeah, IRT Indigo really needs to pick it up now, try and find some pace and make some moves and recover from that spin. But looking at the pace now, you can see Wama he just cannot break that DRS to Trust Cynics behind him, and that is exactly what is going to cost Wama a possible podium or a top 5 in this race, because if he cannot break the DRS to Trust Cynics, that means he's not made the best of his soft compound tyres. Trust Cynics is going to be behind him, and with Trust Cynics being on a better strategy, he's going to go most likely medium hard, with Wama probably going soft hard. That means Trust Cynics is going to have a big advantage in the back end of this race. So Wama wasn't able to make those soft tyres work. He tried to go for a risky strategy. He thought he had enough pace to break DRS to Trust Cynics behind, but after that final lap in qualifying, he's just shown that he has the pace here at Monza, and he's pushing flat out to keep up with Wama ahead of him. You can see Kart Racer on the hard compound tyres is even struggling a little bit to keep up. He's had to use a lot of ERS to stay in the position that he's in, but he is the only driver in the top 4 in this top 4 DRS train actually on the hard, so that could really help him towards the back end of this race. You can see Olaf in P5 on the hards, but he's actually lost DRS to the top 4, and he's under massive pressure from Kepa behind. He might have to consider letting Kepa go, who's on the mediums. He's going to have the better pace, and hope that Kepa can bring him into the DRS. But you can see Olaf is fighting this quite hard. He might just have to let go of this position to try and allow Kepa to go through and catch up to the top 4. So you can see going into Parabolica, but actually Trust Cynics has now possibly decided to go on the attack, because coming into turn 1, even on his medium compound tyres, he's able to get past with the power of the DRS, moves himself back up into the lead of this Grand Prix, and that just shows Wama has not made the most of his strategy, but you can see that's a spin there from Trust Cynics. Whether that was contact from Wama behind or just a mistake on the traction, I'm not too sure. Storm, were you able to catch that, and what do you think of that?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, I think, coming out of that turn there, and yeah, unfortunately, 2 doesn't go into 1, and yeah, he's come off the worst, but there's still a lot of laps to claw back position, so it's not over yet.
You're definitely right with it not being over. I'm not sure if that was contact or not, but I do think Trust Cynics was just getting a little bit too excited on the throttle pedal, and that's why he finds himself down in P7, stuck behind TF Yagazan, currently on the higher compound of tyres. But this helps Yagazan out quite a lot, because he's now one of 3 drivers in the top 6 on the higher compound of tyres, so he's definitely on a good strategy here. That could help him towards the end of the race. You can see Olaf was overtaken by Kepa, and it was quite crucial that he stayed in that DRS and allowed Kepa to try and pull him towards what is now the top 3 after that spin from Trust Cynics, but he just has not had the pace on those hard compound tyres. You can see Trust Cynics trying to find a way past Yagazan, but just was not successful going into turn 1. So Kepa 1.3 seconds off of this top 3 train. He needs to push nice and hard, and you can see he's got about 50% ERS. We need to start pushing that ERS harder if he wants to get into the DRS of the drivers behind, and you can see that he is coming out of the second chicane and now going into the 2 Lesmos. He's really going to have to push hard. He has got hit down to a 1 second gap, and that is a spin there from Wama. He's gotten on the power too early coming out of the second Lesmo, and he has completely lost his front wing. He's going to have to come into the pit lane to get some new tyres, possibly hard tyres, to bring him to the end of the race, as he did start in the softs. He's also going to need to get himself a new front wing. So this now promotes Kart Racer, who started on the hard compounded tyres, is on a good strategy compared to the drivers behind, and since he's in the lead and on hards, he's got the better tyres to come. The medium tyres he's going to be putting on towards the end of the race. So Kart Racer is in a primed position to win this Grand Prix and take advantage of his teammate not having, or his championship rival not having a good race. And you can see he's really not having a good race, because he's just had another spin coming out of Ascari IRT Indigo quite a while. 30 seconds off of the back of Kart Racer. That's over a pit stop distance. Indigo is not looking good in this Grand Prix. One thing that would really help him in this race would be a safety car. But right now we have a top 3 of Kart Racer, Daniel V and Elifar Kepa, all in a DRS train with each other. Kepa had the pace there to catch up to these top 2 and get himself in this train and in the battle for this Grand Prix win. But out of those 3 that are currently on the podium, who would be your favourite for the race win?
It's a bit early on, I think, to be putting that kind of pressure on any driver. But yeah, I think, you know, the progression that obviously the Mercedes, well, one of them has made, should I say. Yeah, I think obviously LFR K3 might be a potential candidate, but the problem is he's on medium, so he's going to be pitting a little bit earlier. Yagazan might be a good shout, I think, on the hards, as also Kart Racer. I think maybe one of them two. Yeah, I think I'd go for one of them two.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be a tricky one to call, but I definitely agree with you there. Any driver currently on the hard compounded tyres is going to be a lot faster towards the back end of the race. We could see them make a lot more moves, but currently the mediums are about 7 laps old, and usually the drivers box around lap 12 to get onto those hard tyres. Some drivers like to stretch it, go for that overcut, spend less time on those treacherous hard tyres. But yeah, I think the mediums are going to be starting to get quite worn. We might see them around 30% tyre wear for a lot of the drivers. So yeah, kart racer, Olaf and Yagzan are all going to be in a good position. And I think the hards might actually be starting to get to that phase where they're faster than worn mediums. So kart racer might look to have more pace in the drivers he's currently battling. You can see Kepa putting him under massive pressure. Kepa wants to get this move done. He knows being third in a DRS train is never the place you want to be. So let's see, coming into the turn one with the DRS wide open, Kepa looks to the inside. Daniel has no straight line speed. He actually boxes in Kart Racer, so Kepa is able to go down the inside. Kart Racer backs out of that move as he got boxed in by Daniel. So Kepa moves himself into that crucial P2, but this isn't necessarily a bad thing for Kart Racer. He's on those hard compound tyres. I don't think these two drivers ahead, they've shown that they're currently faster than him at this stage with their tyre advantage. So I think Kart Racer is in a good position. He can stay in the DRS, save up the ERS, save the tyres, doesn't need to push too hard. And I think these medium runners ahead of him can just drag him along. But you can see all this battling with these drivers has actually allowed Olaf to catch up the gap, make the difference. He's now 1.3 seconds behind, and he's very, very close to that DRS range. And if he can get himself in there, it could be a big battle between these top four. And obviously, Kart Racer and Olaf currently on hards. They will be on mediums toward the end, and we could see those two battling it out for the race win. But Kepa is putting everyone under serious pressure, and the most surprising thing is he hasn't actually used a lot of his ERS, as he had to catch up to the DRS of the top two, and he's now overtaking them. But you can see he's not using any ERS on the straight, and he's already catching in a straight line before the DRS is enabled. And once it is enabled, he just absolutely flies by. Kepa, in the space of 2 laps, has moved from P3 to P1 this race. He's now leading. He's going to be pushing on quite hard and make the most of these last few laps on these medium compound tyres. But yeah, some great pace there, especially in a straight line from Elifar Kepa. I think he is definitely running a lot lower wings from everyone else. I think a lot of people usually run around 0 on the rear wing, or 3, and around 3 to 5 on the front wing. So he might be running maybe even 0 wings, and that's why he's just so fast in that straight line. But Olaf has now caught up to the DRS of the top 3. So do you think we could see him in this battle for the lead, especially being on that alternate strategy?
Yeah, I think of course, you've always got to look at the alternative strategy to any race. But yeah, as also you mentioned, the mediums will be kind of in that period of where the drivers will start to feel that they are coming to the end of their life. They are kind of not where they were probably on lap 1. As we can see, Daniel pitting and trying to do the undercut here. You mentioned obviously about different setups. Now, obviously, I have seen some drivers go crazy, as you mentioned, with the 0 wings. Yeah, I think it's definitely a track that I think definitely brings a lot of fun with racing, and obviously now even crazier setups. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where and how far Daniel moves up on fresh hards. I think where kind of maybe Olaf and Kart Racer will judge if when they can pit for their hard, see how far they can go, kind of etc. Because everyone at the moment in the top 10 are kind of on the same lap number of tyre wears, so it's kind of a situation of, well, who blinks first? And it's really a difficult one for the race leader, because he hasn't got anybody in front of him that can kind of make that decision and then they follow. It's everyone behind them that can, kind of judge, well, do I pit with, or, do I pit with the leader or not? So, yeah, I think being in front is not always the best. Well, it is at the end of the race, but when it comes to pit stop, it's kind of sometimes, unless you've got a pit stop advantage, it's not really your kind of best friend.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there. You have to do a lot of pushing when you're in first place to kind of make up the deficit you have, because the drivers behind you obviously have that power of the DRS against them. Especially at this top speed track against them, about 8/10, 6/10 a lap. A lot of time, definitely. But Daniel V, yeah, he came into the pit lane there. He's come for a big undercut, and Kepa is actually going for more of an overcut. So I think we'll see Daniel V come out ahead of him in the pit lane. Although, actually, now that I think about it, Kepa will probably be in front coming out of the pits, because Daniel V had to go through that cold tyre phase. But then once Kepa comes out of the pit lane, he will be on cold tyres. He's going to lose a lot of time to Daniel V, and that's what could possibly get Daniel V that track position. But you can see Kepa coming into the pit lane now for a fresh set of hard compound tyres. He's now done the overcut. He's going to have 2 lap fresher tyres than Daniel V. That is going to be quite crucial for him in this Grand Prix. And sadly, we've had our first retirement of the race. And here at Monza, that is absolutely phenomenal, because it wasn't even a crash-related DNF. It was IRT Indigo, obviously, fell all the way to the back of the grid, and it just was not going too well for him. So he's now out of this race, our only retirement so far. We can see Kepa comes out just behind Daniel, and that is really not good, because Daniel has warm, hard tyres, and Kepa has to heat up those hard tyres. And you can see what happens when you're on cold tyres and you just try and push a little too hard. Kepa pushing the traction there too hard, and it did not pay off for him. That's a lot of wheel spin. It's lost him about 4 seconds to Daniel V, and he still needs to heat up his tires. By the time he has warm hard tires, he's going to be about 5 seconds behind. So this is very, very crucial for Daniel V in the AlphaTauri, the only driver still racing for AlphaTauri after IRT Indigo sadly retiring from the session. So that is absolutely crucial for Daniel. He's obviously got more worn tyres. It's 2 laps. It might not seem like a lot, but it is quite crucial. But you can see the safety car has now been released, and this is quite crucial. Kart racer Olaf and Yagazan have all just drove past the pit lane as soon as the safety car came out. So they are most likely going to come in this lap. You can see Trust Cynics there. It didn't actually alert his engineer that he was coming into the pit lane, so his pit crew weren't ready for him. That has lost him a lot of time in this race after the pit stops are all done with. And you can see Miku actually comes out ahead of him because of that pit lane glitch. There's plenty of glitches in this game that we like to mention in the commentary box. But you can see this has really helped out quite a few drivers, really, because sorry, that's a virtual safety car. Excuse me, that was a virtual safety car. I thought that was a full course safety car. So a lot of drivers have now just come into the pit lane, gotten a completely free pit stop, and people who weren't in the battle for the win before are now in this battle. Miku, 4.5 seconds off of Elifar Kepa, who was battling for P1 in this race. Trust Cynic's right behind him, but he has got himself a time penalty. Alex the G on medium compound tyres. Miguel is in this train. Boom is also in this train, all on medium compound tyres, as Saw Graphics retires from the session there. So there's a lot more drivers who've just been brought into that battle for the race win. And since kart racer Yagazan and Olaf all missed the pit lane once the virtual safety car came out, they've lost a lot of time to a lot of those drivers. So how do you think that's going to affect the battle for this race win?
Yeah, it's going to affect it quite a lot, I think, as people are going to be on varied pit stop strategies. Yeah, so it's kind of a mixture up and down the grid. It'll be just, who kind of really wants it more. I don't really understand why Trust Vielpex has gone for the softs, unless, obviously, he's going to try and get them to last 10 laps, but I can't see them lasting 10 laps, as there's a battle going into turn 1 for, I believe, what will be a P7, which Alex the G currently has at the moment, as Trustinix and Miguel are kind of battling for that position.
Yeah, it's quite a big battle here in the midfield. We haven't really given it that much light, but now after this virtual safety car, there's a massive DRS train from P5 all the way down to P10. But you can see now Olaf, who was in that battle for the race win, he was ahead of all of these drivers by multiple seconds. And he was even ahead of Kepa. You can see it's been a massive undercut for Kepa and Daniel. Now Daniel's about 8 seconds ahead of Olaf. So Olaf has a lot of pushing to do on these medium compound of tyres. Vipex has actually just put in the fastest lap of the Grand Prix on soft tyres. So yeah, I'm not too sure what he's doing on his strategy. But I think he was just there to try and get the fast lap of the Grand Prix since he's so far down. But Kart Racer comes out of the pit lane. He actually comes out in a much better position than Olaf, who also has a 5-second time penalty. I'm trying to register everything because there's now a battle coming into turn 1 between Alex the G, Miguel, and Miku. Miku has just been overtaken twice. Alex the G moved himself into the front of this DRS train. Currently P6 for Alfa Romeo. But I was trying to go back to the battle for the lead. So Daniel V is currently leading, or in a net lead at least, but he's on 5-lap old hard compound tyres. He's got Kart Racer, who came out in a great position. He had great pace on those tyres. He's now on fresh mediums, and he's right behind Daniel V. So he is in a prime position to win this race. Kepa 3.6 seconds off of this battle. He's going to have a lot less pace than Kart Racer, so I don't think Kepa will be battling for this race win. And then obviously Olaf is even further behind Kepa and has a 5-second time penalty. So right now, Kart Racer is looking at an uncontested race win. But Yagazan now comes into the pit lane. I think he's going to be quite a bit off. He could actually, based off of where Olaf came out of, I think Yagazan is going to come out directly in the middle or just behind that midfield DRS train. So he's not going to be in a good spot coming out of the pit lane. You can see Kart Racer is just settling in on these medium compound tyres, saving his ERS, just sticking in the DRS of Daniel. But speaking of pace, Olaf has actually set the fast lap of the Grand Prix, but you can see his red light is flashing, so he's had to do a lot with the ERS to actually get that fastest lap, so he is pushing quite hard with the battery. Yagazan just about comes out ahead of this DRS train, so he's not going to be under too much pressure. Yagazan and Olaf will be battling away for what could be P4, as Olaf has a 5-second time penalty, so Yagazan just needs to make sure he's within that window. But right now, in this race, is there anyone's performance that has particularly surprised you? Anyone that's doing a bit better than you thought they would usually do?
Yeah, I think the one kind of, if you did watch last week's race, you'll know LFR Kappa, or K3, whichever he wants to be called, got DSQ'd last week, kind of had a really bad week last week, so for him to come back maybe on a podium, maybe on a race win, is yeah, quite an achievement. I think he's not had the best of seasons either, especially going up with the likes of QRT Ian. So now maybe Ian isn't obviously racing. As I say that, I think Daniel is contesting for the win here.
Yeah, and I think Kart Racer has just got that move done. He's now decided this is the time to push and pull away from the drivers behind. He has 5-lap fresher tyres. He's also got the softer tyres. You can see Yagazan is having to defend from this DRS train, so he was not able to pull away, and this has cost him a lot of time in this Grand Prix. Currently P5 and under a lot of pressure from the DRS train behind. This goes all the way from P5 to P10 with Trustinix and Miku both on the hards, and Trustinix with a, is that a 3-second? Yes, it is 3-second time penalty. But you can see, as I was just talking about the McLaren driver, he goes down the inside of Miku coming into the first Lesmo, moves himself up into P8, but this is a bit of a futile effort as he's going to drop right back down to P10 because of his penalty. So he really needs to get ahead of this DRS train, start pulling away if he wants to gain any positions. Otherwise, it's looking like P10 for the Trust Esports driver. But You can see after just one lap of pushing on fresh medium rubber, kart racers pulled away from the DRS of Daniel V. Is it going to be a fastest lap though? Has he used a lot of his DRS? Yes, he has. He sets a 1 minute 20.9, which gives him the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, and he could be looking at max points here, and that's going to be absolutely crucial for his championship. He's currently leading out of all of the full-time drivers, and obviously he's got Bruno, the reserve, and QRT Ian, the promoted now F5 driver, ahead of him. So, yeah, kart racer looking very good in this race. Daniel V, like you said, he's been doing a great performance. Currently P2. He's shown in the last couple of races, I think Mexico was when he really started to pick up the pace and get top 5s, top 6s, and he's been doing great so far, and he's currently on the podium, so looking good in this race. Kepa currently P3 after that wheel spin coming out of turn 1 on cold, hard tyres. It's really gone downhill from there because he's now under pressure from Olaf on the fresher and softer compound of tyres, although Olaf has really hurt his race with that 5-second time penalty. So even if he overtakes Elifar Kepa, he needs to break that 5-second gap to get onto the podium. But you can see it's a massive DRS train all the way from Yagazan, who sadly was not able to pull away after coming out of the pit lane, all the way down to IRT Boom in P10 for Ferrari. But Wama there has, on the exit of Ascari, has just retired from the session, and that has now brought out the full course safety car, and you can see there's been a bit of chaos there in the background, as I think Alex G was going to look for a move coming into turn 1. The full course safety car is now out, and do you think we could see drivers possibly boxing for the soft compound tyres now?
Yeah, I think, it's a situation where if you don't box with the softs, you are going to be kind of falling backwards on the grid. So yeah, I think we'll be seeing all 15 drivers, should I say, all of them boxing for a set of softs. Even Trust Vilpex, I think, will box for a set of new softs. But it will be interesting. Final 7, well, probably I reckon 5 lap. Hopefully no one treats it like a 5 lap open lobby. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how the last final 5 laps go.
Yeah, and someone who wasn't very happy this race, you can see we've had 3 retirements, one of which has just brought out this full course safety car, and Thought Graphics was in the chat there, was not very happy with the racecraft of the drivers he was battling. A man who qualified in the top 10 and sadly DNF'd in this race. I think he came into pit lane and retired after 2 crashes, so yeah, he's not had the best experience this race. But, he's just got to keep his head down and make sure that he's back and ready for Imola next week. We can see it's just, these are rookie errors from a lot of drivers. Daniel V, who was looking to get a podium in this race, has got himself a 5-second time penalty. TF Yagazan, who was looking to get a top 5-second time penalty. Olaf, who was trying to finish on the podium, has got himself a 5-second podium penalty, but he has been able to serve that because he got it previously. But he has now lost actually a lot of track position from that 5-second stop-go penalty. But now it's Yagazan and Daniel who still have 5-second time penalties. So you can see just inconsistent rookie errors from drivers that are battling at the top. That is what costs them the race win. But you can see interesting strategy from Miguel. He has boxed for mediums about 7 laps ago, and he has now decided that he is going to stay out on this compounded tire. He was quite far behind. He had to try something different, but I think with the sheer amount of penalties up and down the grid, going onto the softs probably will secure you a position in the points. So he's not in the best position now. Leganga is going to be coming into the pit lane for a fresh set of soft compound tyres. As you can see, he's on old hards. Hopefully he does not get lapped by the safety car, but you can see Trust Vipex, a driver who we've seen pushing at the front, has now been lapped, and he tries to overtake the safety car. Will he get disqualified from the session? No, the safety car has actually allowed him to go through, so that's quite a rare sight to see. as usually the safety car holds lap cars behind and doesn't really let you through. So Trust Vipex has gotten very lucky there. He's gotten a second chance. He's going to be able to go around the circuit and catch up to the safety car queue and possibly battle for some points paying positions, because it's going to be a bit of a push. Miguel realizes his mistake. He now comes into the pit lane for a fresh set of soft compound tyres, but he's now going to lose a lot of track position because of that. Yagisan going for a different strategy. He got that 5-second time penalty. He's now had to come into the pit lane again because he wants to serve this 5-second time penalty, but it's going to lose him a lot of track position. He's going to come out around P11, so he's going to have to do a lot of pushing to get back into that top 5. We have Trust Cynics in P4. He would be doing very well for himself if it weren't for that 3-second time penalty. But Kart Racer was in for a pretty clear shot of this race win before the safety car came out, so this really has not helped him. Daniel V is now on fresh softs and looking to challenge Kart Racer, but has got himself a 5-second time penalty. And then LFR Kappa is P3, no penalties, fresh softs. So out of all of these drivers so far, we have we're going to have about 5 laps of racing to go. Who would you be your favourite based on the pace you've seen so far for this race win, or maybe just a good performance or a podium in this race?
I think you have to look at anyone without a penalty, really. So easy to get a penalty here at such a high-speed track. So yeah, I think you could look at Kart Racer. He's been up there most of the season. I think Mexico was probably one of the worse races for him. But yeah, Kart Racer, Kepper, possibly Alex, the G, could end up on a podium if he can get the restart correct and kind of leapfrog a few people. Obviously, Pens will help along the way. But yeah, I think for a podium, it's kind of anyone from P6 to maybe P8 is where you're probably going to find a podium sitter. But I reckon you're looking at Kepper or Kart Racer for the race win. And unless Daniel can get past Kart Racer and make that gap within 3 or 4 laps, it's very highly unlikely, I think.
Yeah, so it's going to be quite difficult for the drivers in the midfield, because right now it's quite an even playing field. A lot of drivers are all on fresh softs, but that's actually a front wing that's gone flying there, and that's Trustinix. And you can see there, he's not happy with LFR Kappa. He's obviously thought that LFR Kappa has obviously made a mistake or been braking or accelerating aggressively. And he's not happy with that because he's lost the front wing. And then he goes alongside Kappa and just gives them the angry tap there. So the safety car will be coming in this lap. And you can see Trustinix is not happy about that one bit. His chance of a top 10 is now pretty much thrown. Well, not a top 10, but a decent points paying position is now thrown out of the window because he still has that 3-second time penalty, and he now needs to come into the pit lane for a new front wing. It'll be interesting to see if he stays out, although I highly doubt it, because no front wing will lose you possibly a second a lap, as you can see he's completely lost his left end plate. So yeah, it's going to lose him plenty of time. And you can see trying to get alongside Kappa there. He's not very happy. He's doing some silly things now. But you can see Kart Racer is now warming up the softs, getting them ready for the safety car restart, as he will be leading us away. And I think his main competitor in this race is going to be the Mercedes driver of LFR Kappa. So whether it's QRT Ian or LFR Kappa, we usually see Mercedes at the front. But you can see Kart Racer has chosen his time, and the time is now for the safety car restart. It's a decent one up against Daniel. 6/10 is the gap to Daniel behind, so he's gotten a decent jump on the AlphaTauri driver, and coming into turn 1 he's going to have a decent margin. He's not going to be under much pressure coming into this turn. Olaf though putting quite a bit of pressure on Trustinix. He looks to the inside coming into turn 1. That's a big send from him, but he manages to get the car slowed down, and he gets ahead of Trustinix. But 5-second time penalty is going to set him back quite a bit. He needs to pull away from the drivers behind, but it's going to be quite difficult once the DRS is enabled on what will be lap 26. So right now, while the DRS isn't enabled, he needs to push nice hard. But you can see that's a mistake there, running over the curb, coming into the second chicane, and that has allowed Trustinix get back pass with the front wing damage. You can see Olaf pushing him through the turns because Trustinix has absolutely no grip. This is allowing the top three to run away from the rest of the field. This could allow Daniel to finish on the podium, but he's now got himself 8 seconds of time penalties after extending the track limits just one too many times. He's now got 8 seconds and he's not looking good in this Grand Prix. Olaf putting plenty of pressure on the back of Trustinix, and he's got plenty of pressure behind him, and you can see he's really feeling it. Wheel spin on the exit of Ascari. That's got him a bit of oversteer, but he's still got a better exit than Trustinix coming into Parabolica. He's going to have the grip around the outside. He goes, can he stick this move? Yes, he can. The Aston Martin driver moves himself up into P4. The gap is 3 seconds to the top three, though. He's going to have to push quite hard to catch up to these guys if he wants to try and battle for a podium. You can see Trustinix with that wing damage just constantly losing positions as we see Alex the G look to the outside at turn 1. Can he hold this move? It's 2 into the first chicane and they actually make it work, and Trustinix comes out on top even with that wing damage. IRT boom now looking to the back of Alex the G. Will he look to the inside into the second chicane? I think the answer is yes, but he's just a bit too far back to commit to that move. So everyone maintaining their position for now, apart from Olaf, who moves up into P4. Meanwhile, the battle with the top three is raging on. Daniel moves himself up into P1. Kart Racer not too worried about that position. The best position for Kart Racer to be in is currently P2 because he can hang into the DRS and defend from Kepa behind, and he knows that Daniel, with those 8 seconds of time penalties, is going to drop behind him anyway. So he's currently in a net lead, and he also has the advantage of the DRS. Another person struggling with the track limits is Pro Gamer, currently down in P9, running in the points, but that won't last for long after the penalty is applied. Trustinix defending for his life in P5, although it won't mean much because he has wing damage and a 3 second time penalty. Alex the G, you can see the difference between a front wing and no front wing. Sails around the outside, moves himself up into P5 and looking to get a possible podium in this race because of the amount of penalties Daniel has, but Trustinix is not going to make it easy for him. He looks to the outside coming into turn 1. Even with his front wing damage, he's managing to hold it because he's using the mechanical grip going into these slow speed turns. A little bit of contact between the two drivers, but Trustinix gets out ahead. Alex G does not get a good exit out of there and falls down to P7 with IRT Boom moving himself into P6 in this race. So IRT Boom in a very good position, looking to battle for P4 or a podium, but it's a very big battle here in the midfield and the battle for P5 on track. But IRT Boom currently P6 after having started all the way down in P13. It's been a good race from him so far. Miku started P18. He's currently P10. Elfar Kepa started P11, and he is currently P3 in this race and looking for a net P2. But yeah, in this race, it's been difficult for Trustinix after getting that wing damage, but he's putting up a big battle up against these midfield drivers, but his red light is now flashing. Do you think he's actually going to be able to hold on to this P5 position, even if his penalty means that he's going to lose it at the end of the race?
Yeah, as we're going to get a photo finish, I believe, as a... No, it is the last lap. I thought that was the last lap then, for a minute, as they all make their way down into turn 1. Hopefully no carnage. Oh, I think there's been an incident in the background, and I think that's going to help Olaf to kind of really close that gap up.
Yeah, there was a lot of carnage there. Not too sure what happened, but it looked like contact between Yagazan and another driver. That caused a lot of drivers to start making a lot of mistakes. We could see wing damage, wheel spin everywhere. A lot of drivers losing positions. Daniel V has spun it on the exit of the first Lesmo. He falls all the way down to P7. Olaf in a bit of a no man's land. Boom has lost a lot of time to Olaf. Could Olaf possibly get P3 in this race? He's only got 5 seconds or 3 seconds now of time penalty, so he could be looking for a podium even with his penalty. Kart Racer is pulled away from Elfar Kepa. The gap is 2 seconds, and Kart Racer coming into the final turn of Parabolica. He's done a very good race today. He's shown his pace to everyone and had a great strategy, great pace. And as he comes across the line, he is going to win the Italian Grand Prix and extend his championship lead against the other full-time drivers. Elifar Kepa, all the way from P9 to P2 on the podium. It's been a great race from him, and he showed some really good pace, was able to get past drivers, use the DRS to his advantage, manage his ERS properly, but at the end of the day, I think Kart Racer just had the better pace. And yeah, like I said, he is currently leading the Formula 7 Championship, at least out of the full-time drivers. The only two guys ahead of him are Bruno and QRT Ian, but I think he'll actually overtake Bruno after that one. So, yeah, it's been a great race there. A really climactic end, especially with all that carnage at turn 1. And Kart Racer is the man out on top. He finished P1 with Elifar Kepa beside him and Olaf finishing in P3. So, wow, what a great race. And who did you think had the best performance? Or better question is, who would be your driver of the day for this Italian Grand Prix?
Well, I think with that type of race, it's kind of really hard to pick a driver of the day. But yeah, I think looking at it, I'm gonna kind of give it to the LFR driver. Didn't have a great qualifying session, but nailed it on the day and got himself probably a podium that he probably wasn't even expecting.
Yeah, and he's really pulled it away from qualifying there. You can see he was also just 11 1,000ths off of the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, so it was very close for the fastest lap. And from all the way from P12 to P2, it was a great race from him. Kart Racer also having an amazing race, a really dominating performance from about lap 14 onwards. Once he boxed for those fresh mediums, he was completely unstoppable. And if Daniel V didn't get that penalty, 2 penalties, he could have even won that race because he overtook Kart Racer, but I think Kart Racer might have been taking it a little easy because he knew that Daniel V would finish behind him. Olaf is the third man on the podium, even after getting those 3 seconds of time penalties. He was able to get himself onto that podium, so it was a decent race from the Aston Martin driver, but championship-wise, Clark was not able to make it. Bruno wasn't able to make it. QRT and is currently in Formula 5, and IRT Indigo retired from the race. So that is a massive points gain for Kart Racer and could be a deciding moment in the championship. We haven't really been talking a lot about the championship in this early stage of the season because obviously from about from round 1 to round 5, it's really anyone's game. It could completely change. It still can. We have plenty of rounds to go in this PSGL season, so it's still anyone's game. But Kart Racer puts himself in a very good position after that Grand Prix, and Kepa could be one up there battling. Maybe look to get himself into the championship, but yeah, after that race there, what do you think of those penalties? Obviously, a lot of drivers getting track limits penalties, speed. Be doing a lot better if they just ironed out those little mistakes. Sorry, I think Storm might have left there, but yeah, I'm thinking we're gonna end it on that. It's been a great race here in Italy in PSGL's Formula 7. I really, truly did, truly hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. There was plenty of action, as there usually is in this Formula 7 here in Premier Sim Gaming League. But that is going to be all from myself and Storm. We hope to see you next week at the same time. That's 8 o'clock BST on a Monday for the next round, which Storm mentioned before is going to be Imola. It's a very tricky circuit with plenty of high speed and plenty of low speed. Lots of commitment needed. Only one DRS zone, yet it still manages to make for a great action-packed race. So that is all from us. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you next week at the same time in the same place.